could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You could have all you ever wanted, shoot the moon and reach for Mars. You know you could. Yeah, and times are changing everywhere. Do we dream and do we dare? It's up to you, the door is open wide. Feel the rhythm of today, learn the part and join the play. The world is here, let's take it for a ride. Hey, you could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You could have all you ever wanted, shoot the moon and reach for Mars. You know you could. Larger, larger than, bigger, bigger than, living hopes and dreams. Every boy and girl, higher, higher than, brighter, brighter than, all you wanted. You know, hey, you could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You can have all you ever wanted. Hopes and dreams, every boy. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You could have all you ever wanted. You know you could.
Good morning and welcome to another Coffee Time Live, and welcome back to the channel Grand Colombia. So, I got a bunch of stuff today. We're going to start off with the weather. Oh my God, this camera is so bad. I spent way too much time trying to get the saturation to normal. It's just a bad camera. It's bad. It's really bad. But the weather's nice. Right now, it's about 72 degrees. We're going to have a high today of 76 and a low of 64. And keeping up with the tradition of not forgetting, we've got 4,024 pesos to the dollar. I can't believe I haven't been forgetting that. Let's see. Coffee meetings. They've been going well. They're pretty interesting. I think I'll just keep going. There's a lot of conversations that go on. There's always a little tidbit here or there of new information. So that's very cool. Same people, some come, some go. Some of the best people that moved here are leaving, which is a damn shame. See you, Cliff. See you, Bill. See you, Bill's wife, who's mad at me for trying to talk him out of leaving. But it's been good. And Mark sent me a message this morning. I didn't get to read all of it. It was something about, is it possible to bring somebody to one of the coffee meetings that like an agent for the EPS insurance? And absolutely. There's no problem with that at all. It's a good idea. So if you live here, you're visiting, you might want to swing by. These things are working out pretty good. Good idea, Mark. Let's see what else we got. This week, my week was kind of busy. Part of it was somebody I met a few months ago moving here to Armenia by a truck coming from another country. And some of his plans fell through, and he was left kind of stranded. And so, to the consternation of my building, we brought all the stuff up off the truck so we could release the truck, and his little animals and that kind of thing. And so, you know, it brings to mind, which is what we're going to talk about later today, about moving to another country. So we'll talk about that. And it's not going to infringe on the series. Speaking of which, I'm finishing up editing. The first one will be out this week. I'll probably have 2 out this week. And then there's a third one in this series of what do you do when you move to another country, specifically Colombia and specifically Armenia, but it will apply across the board. I've made sure of that. And it won't be such specifics about telling you how to get your visa if you're retiring and how to get your visa if you're a digital nomad. And a video series like that would end up being War and Peace. You know, it would just be so huge. So I would just go over the highlights of things to do, and you can do your specific research. But that's coming along real well. I'm glad it was suggested. I'm hating the editing, but the rest of it has been kind of pretty cool. I should mention, if all goes well, next week, Alejandra has said that she's going to be here next Sunday as a guest, so that'll be pretty cool. She hasn't been on in a while. And also this week, Robert flew into Armenia, and he's been visiting. Right now, he's in Pereira. As a matter of fact, he sent me a couple little short 20-second clips. This first one, it's taking the bus out of Armenia, and he drives by my apartment building. That's Matisse, and that one is mine. Yeah, I was doing something else. You caught me. And then his second one.
Okay, so I just got off the bus, traveling from one city to another. Welcome to Pereira. That's the name of the city. And this is the bus station. It was only about an hour and a half. So funny, it only took $2. It only cost $2.50 the whole bus ride for an hour. But I just got here, waiting for a friend to pick me up. I'm just gonna chill out, check things out here at the bus station.
Okay, let's go over the chat real quick, and then I'll get on to I've got like, I don't know, maybe 7, 8, 9 news articles. Juka, thank you very much. Mr. Helsinki himself. Juka, greetings. Mr. Anonymous, thank you very much for the contribution. Mark, Mr. Coffee Meeting, good morning. Thanks for the work and time you put into doing the show every week. We all appreciate it, especially all of us that are fortunate to be living here in Armenia. Thank you. That's very nice. And a contribution. Thank you very much. Let's see. Where was I? Okay. Turtle, good morning. How you doing, Turtle? One of my muses. Sorry about that. Libby, hello everybody. I'm patiently waiting for the start of coffee time like you are. Yeah, me too. I was sitting here waiting about 7 minutes because I had everything done. John, Mr. Sawicki, morning all from Seattle. John, hey Juka, are you in Helsinki? Mike Jarvis, good morning all. How you doing, Mike? Juka. Hey, John, almost I live 9 miles outside of the city limits. Ben Lake with his false identity. Good morning. How you doing? Rob, good morning from Pereira, Colombia. I'm surprised. I was surprised you were able to make it. J- lived ones and loved ones. Okay, don't know what that is. Lapland. All right, I can't follow that one. Let's see. Oh, I see. He's got some loved ones and. All right, that's Finland. That's Lapland. Gentleman X, heading out to Salento this morning. I will let you know my unfiltered thoughts. Everyone that I have talked to seems to be on the same page. It's beautiful. Well, you know, it's because it's beautiful. There's no way around it. Audio and video good. Thank you. I went through and tested as much as I could. I have no control over what YouTube does, but it seemed to be good. Okay, let's see. Awake and aware. Do you get many sunny days in Armenia? It seems cloudy a lot. Cloudy is a good thing because the clouds shield from the UV rays. And so it keeps you from getting sunburn, basically. Do we get many sunny days? Yeah, we get a lot of sunny days. But our sunny days are parts of days. Like in the morning, this is pretty typical. In the morning, you have the leftover from the cool weather, the 60 degrees or the low 60s from the night and early morning. And so we get the clouds that are, you know, low-flying clouds. Sometimes we'll get some fog. Not very often. It's usually clouds and low-flying clouds. And that's what you're seeing is, you know, the overcast. They're just clouds that are, you know, dropped down because, you know, we're at an altitude. So there's that. But then what happens is as the day goes along, or as the morning goes along, most of that tends to lift. You see more and more blue sky. And the bad part is around 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that's where you get your clearest part of the day, but that's also the hottest part of the day. So I always plan. I'm an early riser, especially. I've become more of an early riser. I get up at 4:30 in the morning. I do my stuff around here, and then I try to get out if I got errands to run, and I go do those things. I usually try to, if I'm going out, get out of here by 9 o'clock, maybe 8, 9 o'clock. And that gives me a number of hours to go out and do things, enjoy the day. And then I try to get back home or to be somewhere around 1 or 2 o'clock. So I don't have to be out when it's like, oh, it's 83 degrees, but the sun's murder. And, you know, that's not fun. So I plan my day so I get to do everything that I want to do, but I never have any comfort issues. And then in the afternoon or into the evening, it'll rain. How long? Usually half an hour or so. You never know. Sometimes it's a relatively hard rain. Most of the time, it's more of a light, sprinkly type of rain. We get rain pretty much, with exceptions here or there. We get rain almost every afternoon or evening. Which is why when you look around, no matter what time of year it is, it's always lush and green. And we have some of the best water. Today it's water. We got great water here. This is out of the tap. I drink it right out of the tap. It's no problems. No funny taste. It's the best non-tasting water. It's really good. And it's good when you wash your clothes and take a shower too. I don't know what that's about. Somebody mentioned something about minerals or lack of minerals. I don't know, but it's perfect water. Okay, Ron to the Z. Usually clear, partly cloudy in the AM, shower late afternoon, evening. We don't get morning showers very often. And again, I'm talking broad picture. Weather recently has been kind of like all over the board. That's the El Nino effect, but that's not normal. It's not typical. And if you looked at the last handful of months and figured that's the way Colombia is, and then you moved here and you found out your next 5 years was really not like that, don't be surprised. Carlos Gonzalez, good morning, family from Coral Springs, Florida. Okay. And there we're caught up. So let's get on with it. Let me clear that. My first headline. Due to its landscape, gastronomy, culture, and the kindness of its people, Colombia is the third most beautiful country in the world. Says who? It's this God, I forget the name now. It's a foundation in England, and every year they do this beautiful country survey thing. And in Colombia, we're right behind Indonesia and New Zealand, which are kind of almost understandable. I would put Colombia maybe only New Zealand, but Forbes also. Well, I think Forbes is taking the information from that outfit that did it. You'll probably see it all over the news, but maybe I'm wrong. When I saw the article, I looked to see who it actually was it some obscure thing, and it actually isn't. It's a long-standing, well-known thing, and drawing a blank. We'll just chalk it up to Alzheimer's. Okay. Prosecutor's office occupies assets in Armenia of former EPS manager Azmet Salud. Well, the manager isn't Azmet Salud. It was the EPS, the insurance company, Azmet Salud. And I think it was last week I mentioned that on any given year, we'll have 12 to 14 insurance companies to choose from. The insurance is a private thing. But I also mentioned that the bottom one or two, pretty much every year, you'll see them come and go. So the ones at the top are very stable. By most accounts, Sura is probably the best in most of Colombia, and running a close second or sometimes first, again, depending where, would be Sanitas. Sura is actually part of the financial group of Bank Colombia. So, those are pretty dialed in, but you get down to the bottom, you got these, fly-by-nighters that kind of come and go. And you can opt in if you want. But this guy, he absconded with, nearest I could figure, the manager of this, of about $650,000 and left the country. And of course, so the authorities here in Armenia, they swept into their property, seized their property, and they're going to sell it off to get money back to the people who lost money. So yeah, that happens. All right, what's next? Oh, no. Well, let me see. Good morning. I was wondering if you know about health insurance there. I have Medicare in the United States, and the government insurance there. I have prostate cancer, pre-existing problem. EPS, pre-existing is not a problem. Medicare, if you're going to be living here and using the health services here, you won't need Medicare because it doesn't apply here. You can't use it here. And that'll put about $150 back into your pocket. However, if you do cancel it and then at some point in the future you decide that you're going to move back and you want to reinstate it, there's a penalty. I think it's like 10%, but I'm not sure. There's some penalty on it. When you go to cancel it, they require that you know, and they will tell you. It's like a disclaimer, but and you have to cancel it in person or by phone. I canceled mine while I was living here, and I had to do it by phone. And it wasn't too bad. You know, it wasn't the nightmare of getting connected that I expected. Okay, next one. With a very high score, Candio obtained first place in the Institutional Performance Index. It's based on, this is for Colombia, where they grade the states or the departments. And Candio is #1 in all of Colombia. It would be like saying New York is the #1 state in all of the United States. When it comes to a series, there's actually 7 things, but the ones that are really the most important, understandable, the procedures that they operate with, the services that they provide, the transparency of the government of this state, the satisfaction of the people here, the results that they're able to achieve. So if they get X number of dollars, does that actually come to fruition? And is the value of that what it was they received? And it's Candio is really good about that. You know, there's occasionally there'll be somebody that tries to scam or embezzle, but for the most part, as soon as it's known, they get hammered down, and the money that comes in to do any particular project, that project actually happens, and you get the full value of the money that was put into it. So that's one of the reasons they're top of the chain here in Colombia, because you know there's some places not so much like that. So the results and the management itself, how efficient they are, how responsive they are. You know, there's some places that are run by little tyrants that, you know, pretty much dictate. And here in Candio, it's not like that at all. It really is the people's government here in Candio, where people have input, they have a say, and if there's some kind of issue that they're talking about, it's addressed. So, you know, so I'm happy about that, but I'm not the least bit surprised. Okay, here's a touch of bad news. Are you no longer able to cover your expenses? Rents will increase in Colombia in 2024. Now, I have to say, when I first read this, I thought, well, that's kind of rude, you know, rubbing people's nose in that, hey, are you broke? Well, guess what? You're going to get broker. But then I realized they're actually talking to the property owners. So if you own a property and you're renting it out, you know, at the old rent, when you factor in inflation, you were having trouble covering your expenses. You might even have trouble covering your mortgage, and you were locked into a contract. So they're just saying rents will increase. And the way it increases, it'll still be up to the property owner, but they go by the CPI, Consumer Price Index. And in other words, the inflation number, and that establishes how much they will be able to raise their rent at a maximum. You see, there's actually a legal limit. It could be, you know, 3%, 5% that they are allowed to increase their rate. They can't just say, well, I need, you know, I want you out of here. I want to rent it to somebody else, so I'm going to hit you with a 25% increase. They can't do that. Plus, they have to give you prior notice, at least a month's notice before your contract expires, so that you can opt out. So, and maybe one day I'll tell a story. I got caught up in that once, came out of it fine. This year, they don't have the number yet, but because like last month, the inflation rate was 10.3, and throughout the year, it's been around the 10% mark. They're guessing that's probably going to be where it falls. It'll probably be around 10%. So if you're renting, you're going to expect an increase. because the people that own that property have been getting squeezed. Okay. Here's a good one. El International Airport. A window from Condillo to Colombia and the world. And you see some different brands here. You got Latam, you got Avianca as always, you got Copa, and you've got Spirit. And there was a time when the only one flying international was Spirit. What's going on is, I mentioned this before, they're extending their runway, but now there's a larger project that is now in place. They're buying up. They're going to have 3 times the property that they have now. There'll be new terminal work. There'll be some infrastructure work. There's a lengthening of the runway. But with that comes, and all that work, most of it will be done next year, but there's some things that will extend out to 2026. By 2026, all the work plan will be completed. But here's the awesome part. They're adding a whole bunch of flights, international flights. They're going to be adding at least a few times a week direct flights to Argentina, which is pretty cool. They're going to be adding flights to New York, and they're going to be adding a bunch of flights to Europe at various places. Spain for sure. A lot of people here. Spain has become more and more popular. It's not like historically everybody wanted to go to Spain, but recently it seems like everybody wants to go to Spain. You know, it's like the number one place. They want to go to Paris. You know, they watch the same movies we watch. But then Spain is right behind it. But there's going to be a number of flights unannounced at this point. It's too far away. There's a lot to putting these contracts together. But the airport will certainly suffice. And I read one of the comments. Well, I read the comments, but one of the comments locally was saying, well, this is a big waste of money, and it's still better to fly into Pereira. I don't know why they're wasting their money, and it's only international in name only. Well, this was, somebody local was kind of ignorant about the topic, because it's not international in name only, and there's more planned. This is, a very popular place. People should be able to fly in here, and that will only create more wealth for the area. So there's that. Wasting money? No, I mean, you put money in, but the big thing was Pereira is better. And that was brought up with me by somebody, a gringo, also recently, and it's not better. There's a rumor saying, well, you can go through immigration much faster. You can basically, in Pereira, you can just kind of walk through. But if you're in Armenia, it could be, a couple hours. Well, let me tell you, I meet a lot of people at the airports, both Pereira and Armenia, and I have for a number of years now. And my wait for them, by the time their plane lands, which I have their itinerary, and I'm sitting there at that time, because you never know how quick they're going to come out, to the time they walk out that door, is essentially the same on average. Now, on any given day, I've had people in Armenia, the flight will actually land early and they're out the door like 5 minutes after their scheduled time to land. That was like amazing. It's never like that. I'm glad I come early. In Pereira, I've had to wait up to over an hour. However, that's not normal for Pereira. It's not normal for Armenia. It's typically somewhere between a half an hour and an hour. And here's the thing, and I see your comment. I get what you're saying. If you're going to Pereira, it makes sense. I fly to Pereira on United Airlines. Cheaper, not so sure about that. Maybe on certain flights, yes. I've looked at these over the course of the last handful of years. It's kind of ballpark. It's very similar. and way more comfortable than silver. Silver, you mean Spirit. I'll say yes about Spirit, but Spirit is not the only one. Copa is fine. So, you have your choice. You don't have to fly Spirit anymore. That ship has sailed. They still fly in. They're probably the cheapest and fastest. But here's the thing. You fly into Pereira, but you're intended to come here. Even if customs is a little bit faster. And even if, let's say the ticket was $50 cheaper, well, you still got to get from the airport to where you're going. And depending on when the flight is, it might mean you want a hotel overnight. The number of people that come in that have later flights, and that's what they opt to do. A lot of people fly to Bogota and then Pereira as a connection. They don't even fly direct. But if you fly direct, so are you early enough to where you're just going to keep on going? Then you've got to are you going to take the bus? So you take a taxi to the bus terminal. You get on the bus, you go to Armenia, you're in that terminal. After you fought through all the traffic in Pereira, which is a nightmare. And then you go from the terminal in Armenia to wherever it is you're staying. By the time you're done, you've added several hours onto your trip, where if you flew into Armenia, once you're out the door at the airport, you're 20 minutes away from wherever you're going to go. So, I say this because I know both. I've flown both, although it's been a while since Pereira. But I get what people are saying. Do whatever you're comfortable with. But my point is, if you're coming to Armenia or Candio, it's very efficient to fly into Armenia. And instead of, a lot of bus and taxi or drivers and expense and potential hotels and all of that stuff, you kind of fly in, you get to your hotel, and you're good to go. So I see it as a much more positive. But even if the pluses and minuses kind of balance themselves out, and for some people it might, depending on what you're doing, it might be better for you in your particular situation to go to Pereira or Armenia. However, with this airport expansion and all the things that they're doing and the added flights, there is absolutely no doubt that Armenia will be superior and it will be this region's hub, because in Pereira, there are no plans on the table to make that airport any larger. It more than serves, and as Armenia becomes larger, they become the big boys in town, that'll actually be less of a demand on Pereira, because like Ron won't want to fly into Pereira unless he's going to Pereira. He's going to want to go to the nice new terminal that, it's much quicker. So that's the point, is the progress there. Okay, next headline. Oh, we got Juan Nunez. Hello from Ciclovia Medellin. Howdy. Okay. Pablo Escobar's hippos will be sacrificed. It's hard-pressed to find that headline, because I've expressed to you before, people share their love of animals, and this story doesn't really express that, but they got to do something. So here's the deal. If you're not aware, back in the day when the man who shall not be named, I was surprised they had that in their headline. People are so sensitive about that. But he imported into his compound near Medellin, I believe it was 4 hippos. It might have been 2, but I think it was 4 hippos. And those 4 hippos have grown to getting close to 3,000. They were essentially just abandoned, left in the wild. There's no, they don't breed like cats, but they do breed. It's just a slower process. So it takes a long time for that population to build up. So over the course of, 40 years, It's built up to as many as there are. Without any real natural enemies, they're born and they live, and they live to a healthy old age. And so the issue is they're becoming quite problematic. They need to grow out and expand. There's, I guess they're digging up people's gardens or something. I don't know, but it's becoming problematic. And to the point where it's become serious enough, they're going to be spending a god-awful amount of money to go in and sterilize or even put down, depending on the situation. Their goal is to get them all sterilized so there's no new ones born, and the ones that are alive live out their lifespan. But there's some, depending on their health and the situation, some of them get pretty aggressive. So depending on the situation for each one, some may be put down. And that's what's got a lot of people up in arms about it. But they got to do something. And it turns out that this euthanasia thing has a cost of somewhere around $68,000 per hippo. That's crazy money, because if you want to picture it as the equivalent, multiply it times 4, and that's the dollar amount, if you're from the US, that you would be used to hearing for that cost. And so plus they got to go through and they've got to evaluate them. There's a lot to it. So couldn't find the headline. If you can't find the headline, that's why. Okay, next one. I'm going to ask for information. Bolera Kujabra. Why can't I say that? That's the name for Armenia. I even had a story about that a month or so ago. But this lady was a world champion bowler, and she's from here. Bowling is a thing here. And so they've opened a new bowling alley in her name as a tribute, which is very nice. There's 12 lanes. It could be expanded with 8 more, with plans to do that. So that's very nice. I get asked occasionally, is there bowling? Yes, there's bowling. However, I wasn't aware of this, and it's new. And so, I tried to look it up, and I couldn't find any information on it because it's new. It just opened. There was an old one down in Central that was about the same size, and I discovered that one is closed. So they're closing that one, and they're opening this one. I'm not quite sure the deal. I don't know where this is located. Maybe this is even located in the same place and it was refurbished. I don't know. If anyone knows, I would love to know. I get frustrated when I spend a lot of time trying to find information and I can't find it. But there's that. And it's not the only one, like the Club Bolo, which I highly recommend for a cheap membership to have Olympic pools and clay tennis courts and bowling and all kinds of things. Featured dinners for members and Saturday night live bands and football, soccer, tons of things. And that's up here in the north. Okay, so there's that. Let's see. Awake and Aware. Okay. Don't know what that is. I could talk for hours on what is there to do here. There's a ton of things to do. But I do want to show you something. It's near Pereira. It's not far from here. But it's a spectacular place. Or so I'm told. I have never been there. It's the only featured thing anywhere around here for miles that I haven't actually gone to and done videos on. Never gone to this place. Every person I know practically has been there Every local I know practically has been there. Ice water is getting warm. It's the thermal springs, the hot springs. And here is a picture. It's got a very interesting waterfall. It comes from one source, and you can see that it spreads out over to a number of waterfalls, and then cascades down from one level to the next. But attached to it here is you've got these coming off the side of it. You've got the hot springs that have been built up with services. You say they put that concrete pad around it. That's an actual hot springs, but they've made it convenient for people to come and to use it. And they've also put up all kinds of infrastructure there. There's a nice hotel and a restaurant and all kinds of things. But the road getting to it, it's, well, you almost have to take a Jeep, but they're hireable everywhere. That's probably the best way to go to get there. Okay. Okay, because of what happened this week on the moving here, I just want to mention a few things. And one, it's going to be a little self-serving. As many of you know, and as a matter of fact, many of you have hired my services. I do, you know, kind of get you acclimated, but I rarely mention it. I don't really promote it. Information's on the website. People stumble into it, or they'll see these videos and ask me if I would be able to do something. And I do have something set up to help get them acclimated in the shortest period of time with the fewest errors. So having said that, and I probably, when I finish editing these videos for moving here, I'll probably put a couple plugs in there. But it brings up a couple things that happened this week that I wanted to mention. First of all, you need to have contacts. If you're going to be moving here, you need to know how to, at the very least, how to find out how to get your insurance, and if you didn't get your visa yet, how to get your visa. You're going to need contacts for, you know, who do you talk to about renting, short-term, long-term. You know, you need to get a hold of people. I don't feel good today. How do I get a doctor? You need to find out these things as soon as you can, preferably even before you come. But at the very least, when you first arrive, it's got to be on a Santa Rosa's tamales are great, I think you meant, and I agree, even though I've never been there. Okay. It's critical to know these things at least when you arrive, because if you don't, you're going to get all kinds of recommendations from locals, from expats. They may or may not be the best way to go. A lot of recommendations are only because it's the only thing someone knows. It could be the worst service of all that's available, but they won't know that because it's the only thing that they ever dealt with. And so having the right recommendations is pretty critical. I don't want to go into detail because I don't want to reveal, but there's something that someone did because they didn't know any better, and it ended up costing them thousands of dollars that they wouldn't have had to spend otherwise had they just known. And there's no way to recover that. And that's part of it, is mistakes cost money. And you don't know when you're making a mistake. So I want to emphasize this as much as possible. And why I'm taking this time in the video is because just this week, 2 situations, the one that cost thousands of dollars. It's wholly unnecessary. It doesn't have to be that way. And I'm one to talk, it's like, well, after I was done with my cancer, I flew into Ecuador. with my two big suitcases, and I just kind of went exploring. Except I didn't really. I knew better. I've traveled a lot, 20 some countries. But I knew somebody that lived in Ecuador that I had met in the United States a number of years before. And we kept touch. And before I left, we had a lot of communication. And so when I got to the airport, she actually met me with her uncle at the airport and took me to where I was going to be staying, which was really critical then because I was so sick. I wasn't supposed to leave. I was supposed to be back in bed recovering, but you know, I spent enough time in bed. So even a seasoned traveler, because I was a seasoned traveler, I knew not to just go in blind. But a lot of people do go in blind because they don't know how important it is. Now, if you're independently wealthy and you can afford to make $1,000 mistakes, yeah, who cares? But most of us aren't. And most of us, that money comes dear and it becomes very difficult or impossible to replace. And so you've got to make some wise choices. And that means planning ahead. I will try to address this a little bit more in these videos coming up, all depending on the editing. But because I was unsure what was going to work out, I just wanted to make sure that I mention it here. Plus, if you have any questions today on moving here, we'll use that for our Q&A time. Bills aren't till tonight anyway, although it's looking pretty grim, right? Not looking great. So, officially, it's Q&A time. It's time to start asking your questions. Remember, 4 question marks first, then ask the question. You gotta love that clip, right? Okay. So, what do we got? It seems like there's a bunch of people here visiting right now. A bunch, like in a handful. We don't get, yeah, you should be careful. You get a bunch in Medellin, you're talking thousands. You get a bunch here, you're talking 3 or 4. Because it's pretty rare. All right, we got any questions about moving here? Are you thinking about moving here? You are here. Do you have any questions about it? Feel free. Now's your time. So I have to say that going back on the thing where I don't really promote very much of myself helping, and it's because it's not like it's a job or anything. So, but recently it's kind of opened my eyes that I have underestimated the value of what I have done for other people. Well, that's not to brag. It's just, I should have just realized that, but I mean, I sort of did, but it really hits home when you hear about these kind of stories. What category of mistake cost these people so much money? Well, because 3 things happened this week. I guess nobody will know which one I'm talking about because I really don't want it to be personal. But it was their initial rent and how they went about renting things and not knowing what the laws are, what the normal is. And there were 3 this week. One of them in particular was, well, 2 actually. Their mistake cost a lot of money. The third one was a mistake in progress that I gave some input to and kind of turned that ship. And it wasn't anything they hired me. I just, hey, this is how it is. Because rents are misunderstood here because people read Facebook and they think they understand. So I'll take a minute and mention it. Let me, in Medellin, you go there, it's not unusual to have them tell you that you've got to have like a 6-month deposit. I've never really heard of more, but it's typical 6-month deposit. And you might hear 3, depending on how much competition there is. You also hear about they're going to have, or not a 6-month deposit, I'm sorry, 6 months prepaid rent. But then you also hear about we're going to charge a deposit. So in Medellin, you might have a property, let's say 5 million pesos a month. They're going to want X number of months ahead of time for you to, to pay. Well, at least that's there in rent or in a place to live. But then they may want another 5 million as a deposit. Well, the thing here is deposits are not legal. Now they can do cleaning deposits, which amounts to like 150 or 200,000 pesos. It's what, $30, $40, maybe $50 maximum. And that's flexible, but it's not a month's rent. It's simply not legal. And where this came about, a little backstory, is deposits used to be a kind of a typical thing, particularly in Medellin, is where this issue mostly stems from. And the problem came where the deposits weren't getting paid back. And so you'd have a fair number of lawyers getting involved and maybe go to court. It was just an ugly thing. And nobody was happy when the thing came out. In Ecuador, it was kind of similar. You give a deposit, you might as well just say goodbye to it. So they have this law here now, so you can't do a deposit. Well, here's the thing. Let's say you do a deposit because you don't know better. But you don't know that you could say, no, you can't do that. And so you say, oh, okay, well, that's fair. I'm used to doing a deposit where I come from. So you give them a deposit. Well, because it's not legal, whether it's in the contract or not, it doesn't matter. You can't enforce something that wasn't legal. So you get to the tail end, the owners know that, you don't get your deposit back. You have no recourse. You can't even attempt to go to, to the court. Ignorance of the law is no excuse applies here too. And so, you're screwed with a, significant chunk of money. So the nuances of how, rents are supposed to take place are just not known by people coming here. And it may sound familiar and maybe, oh, it's a perfect place and like that. And without knowing any better, they make a bad choice that later they find out costs them a fair amount of money. So, you gotta be careful with, what you're putting your money into. What's your window camera so we can avoid getting it? Well, it's not so much the camera. I don't even remember the brand. You probably would never get it anyway. It was a backup camera I got. It was relatively cheap, but it took a lot of abuse, particularly in one of my moves. And so I don't know that I blame it completely on the camera. When I first got it, it looked pretty good. I actually had to use it for a few coffee times, and nobody really noticed. Mike, you're absolutely right. A good guide or assistant will save you much more than you can pay them. Google Translate, not knowing where to go for what will cost you money. Yeah, I got the much more. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, I could say that any person that I've ever done that with never had any regrets and always had thank yous, because they realize as we went through those few days of what they would have done versus what we actually did. My goal is get people settled in within a month. That's finding their permanent place and, being legal and good to go. And you can do it on your own. You certainly any mistakes, and that's perfectly fine. But like I said, I had this kind of reawakening of how I underestimated the value of what I did because of what I've been observing for the past few years. And this week, like I say, it just really hit home. Which company to use has cosigner in your apartment rent? Which company to use as cosigner in your apartment rent? I am not sure what you're asking. However, you will find that some people may ask for a cosigner. Lived here 5 years, going over 5 years. Oh, by the way, I'm waiting on my permanent residency. Woo! Paperwork. I've never, let's see, 1, 2, 3. In 5 years, I've lived in 4 different places. One place I lived for 2 years. I've never had a cosigner, never needed a cosigner. This last one, I actually went through an agent so I could do that video. I'm regretting it now, but for my own reasons. But the information was good, and I found out some positive things. So if you are going to go through an agent, that's cool. Even though 90% of them are trash. But owners, they may want a cosigner too, but there's ways around this stuff, and it's part of it. I don't know anybody local that really has those kind of issues. It's just not a traditional thing. They can ask for everything. They can ask for deposits. They can ask all this kind of thing. It's knowing whether you should be doing that or not. And it doesn't mean you're going to lose the apartment. Mike, I've never been required to have a cosigner. That's because you went through Lawrence School of Real Estate, and Alejandra helped you. And I spent a fair amount of time with Alejandra because she wasn't from Armenia. She was from Bogota. So I had to teach her how to locate them and what the procedures were and all of that. So that what happens is I use her a lot of times as a referral. If somebody's just looking for an apartment, she'll go out and beat the pavement, because the best way is to, walk the area and knock on doors and look for signs and make notes. And, so it's all about knowledge. Lawrence, local knowledge was invaluable, even though I speak better than average Spanish. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys, and you know it, but I'm not looking for confirmation on it. I just had that realization this week, and so I'm personally giving that a compromise. I started making videos back in Ecuador because of those two people. I'm not going to bore you with the story again, but this old woman, and in that same week, this old man ran into the woman crying and discovered that they had made life-changing mistakes because of bad information. And the woman especially was in a horrible situation. I mean, she was half a step away of being a street cat food woman. It was horrible. And so I started making videos to put out real information of what it was like and what Cuenca was like and how expensive it was as compared to what they were being told. You weren't going to go there on $800 a month and live like a king. I'm sorry. You need a couple $1,000s a month. It's an expensive place. And so that's how I got into videos. And time goes on, and I live my life day to day. I was requested for several years about doing this guide helping people. And I said, no, I don't want to get involved. And finally, I was convinced by a few things to do it. And it's been successful, but mostly it's been really fulfilling when I'm doing it. But because I don't promote it, I don't advertise it, I can go months at a time and not really talk to anybody. I get more often. I get paid for Skype calls for an hour or two, but I'm not here trying to drum up business. It's just when I see what went on, and then I'm reminded why I even started doing business. I wouldn't be doing these videos if it wasn't for that situation. So now 7 years later on the videos and all of these coffee times, it still holds true. Good information is really valuable. Do you ever use a company that can use as a cosigner for rental? Not as a cosigner, but there is a company that I discovered using the agent this time that will take care of that issue for you. However, like I say, like Mike says, like I'm telling you, I've never needed one. I've never had one. I've never been told that I had to have one or I couldn't rent. Um, and I'm speaking in Armenia. Now, other places that might be different, but here in Armenia, um, if they say, well, you need a cosigner, say, well, you know what? I'll rent the place, but I've got to do it without a cosigner. And you'll get, oh, okay. But again, it's just knowing and having the confidence of you do know. In a previous Coffee Time mentioned that a Fyodor could be avoided by using a certain company. This might be what the question pertains to. Yeah, it might be, and it would depend on the agent that you're going through. And if you're not going through an agent, it's not an issue. It doesn't come up. I don't remember the name off the top of my head of the company that I went through. It cost me a couple 100,000 pesos, which was applied towards a cleaning deposit if I was approved. This is actually, I think you need to be here for a while. Basically, they looked at my credit. They looked at basically my financial life here. I had to send them the last 3 months of my finances and proof of my income and that kind of stuff. And they basically guaranteed to the real estate company or to the owner that they would receive payment. So, it's kind of like a cosigner for hire. However, I only had to go through that because I went through an agent. And I will still recommend today, having gone through an agent, thinking, okay, I'm telling people not to go through an agent because I had never gone through one, but many people, local and expats, told me stories, and it's like, don't go through an agent. Well, I got called out on it, so I went through an agent. And now that I've gone through that process successfully, don't go through an agent. There's all kinds of reasons you don't want to go through an agent. I don't know if I need to, go into that now because our time's about up. Another time, if you want to question me, I'll tell you. And it's not to slam anybody in particular, but going through an agent is kind of a mini nightmare, and it's wholly unnecessary. What is that company's name? Like I said, I don't know. I don't remember off the top of my head. But it's not something, it's done through the agent. So you go through the agent. The agency that I used that went through that was Key. Now, the weird thing about that was I talked to several agents, because agents are not a licensed entity. Anybody can be an agent. I could be an agent. There's another gringo that acts as an agent. Don't say anything. You assume that agents are educated and licensed and have a code of ethics, and forget it. They're just somebody who says, I are agent. And they will try to lock down as much money as possible for themselves. And they don't even care about the people that own the property. It's all focused on themselves. I have a story about that where that happened to me once, where I was buying directly from an owner, but an agent was involved. Also, listings are not exclusive. So you can have a listing by one real estate company and 2 others also have that same listing. So real estate is completely different here. But I went through Key, and as I started to say, the interesting thing about that was one of the agents I was talking to on one particular property had this option. Another person at that same agency, out of that same office, a different property I was looking at, knew nothing about that option as a possibility. And she was trying to hit me up for deposits, because the thing is, the deposit was, they don't want to say it, but essentially goes in their own pocket. The owners aren't looking for one because they know they're not legal. So, I mean, you just have to, if you know the situation, you don't run into these things. If you don't know, it's just all too easy. people can understand how you view it, and they position themselves so you have a comfort. Oh, it's much better to go through an agent. I've got protections where if I go to the owner, I'm on my own. You would think that, but it's kind of the opposite. You have legal protections if you're dealing with the owner. When you go through the agent, they know all the loopholes where you could have legal recourse, except they've covered their bases so that you'll end up having no recourse. So anyway, that's all I really wanted. I just wanted to get it off my chest because, you know, these things just infuriate me when, you know, people are getting scammed when it's wholly unnecessary. Maybe I'm more sensitive to it because I ran through a difficult period and struggled, and I had to go 2 months living on a bag of rice. You know, I don't want to see anybody have to go through that. So, sorry, I didn't realize that my fingers mistakenly sent a text. Oh, you mean the M one? It's no problem. NB90, buenos dias. Howdy, how you doing? All right, we're 5 minutes over almost, so we're gonna end it here. Mark, thank you. Jerry, thank you. Juka, thank you. I appreciate it. How can I find your email? I've heard you tell us a million times and never kept it. Okay. Here's my email. Here's my email. But if you go to the website, which you scrolls at the bottom of this video, grandcolumbia.live, constantly in every video. If you go there, it's my website, and it's got various ways of contacting and a lot of information that you might want to know. I even have a blog. I haven't written in it for a few years, but I was doing an almost daily blog of my life, and I did it for 2 years, moving to Ecuador and visiting Colombia and ultimately moving to Colombia. And I was compiling those pages. It actually would amount to an average size book. So I used to write quite a bit. If anyone needs information about a shipping company from South Florida to Armenia, my parents had moved back and forth a couple times, and they had really good experience. I don't have any affiliation with this company. Yeah, you feel free to, we've got a Facebook page, Adventure in Grand Columbia. You can throw those in. You could say, I know about this company. People ask me about that relatively often, and I don't know enough to give a recommendation. There's companies out there I haven't had personal experience, and the truth is I've yet to meet anyone who had a person. Well, I did meet one, but it doesn't matter. I didn't find out anything about somebody's personal experience enough to actually find out. So, put it on the web page, Facebook page, and just put your disclaimer. You don't know firsthand, but you know somebody who had success a couple times, and people at least have something to start with. Just want to help. Carlos, I thank you. I appreciate it. Please, do you have a link where to go to find out about how to get residency without attorney, lowest cost? I want to do it alone. I don't necessarily recommend. You're not going to get residency until you've lived here for 5 years. In your case, you would have a retirement visa. And I recommend Luz because she makes it painless. You can do it yourself. There's a web page, but I just spoke to somebody, I think 2 weeks ago, that did it himself, or he had somebody help him, or both. I'm not sure. And it seemed like everything went through, but it ended up that there were things that weren't done because they didn't know any better. And while he got his visa, there were other parts to it that became problematic. But I don't recommend a lawyer because lawyers screw it up. Everybody that I talked to that used a lawyer, it was somehow screwed up. Because lawyers, with almost no exception, don't do this very often. Where if you get somebody like Luz, she's doing it all day long, every day. And the only time you're going to run into a problem is when everybody does, when they change the law. It takes several months for things to settle out, and a lot of mistakes get made in the meantime. Do not want to ask Google. Do not trust it much. I don't know about Google, but you can email me directly, and I'll put you in contact. And if you want to do it on your own, I'm sure she would let you know. She's in Pereira, yes. There are some here in Armenia, but the thing is, when I came here, I needed it. And she was recommended, Turtle recommended her to me because he knew a number of people that had used her and had good success. And he went through her and raved about her. So I think, well, okay, I wasn't recommending her yet, but then I went through it. And it was so painless. It was so easy to do. Of course, they were easier then, but she just made it so pleasant. And so then when people started asking, I would put her name out. Well, since then, many dozens of people have gone through her. And with the exception of Mike, who had some problems, but that was exactly when they changed the law. It wasn't her, although he thought it was her. It wasn't her. But it was chaotic in that period. But all the rest of the last 4 years now, she's been flawless. Mike, you're still here. You can verify that. I know he got I don't think he's mad at her anymore. I think he realizes, but at the time he was spitting bullets. What the hell is she doing to me? Well, it's what the new law is doing. Okay. I think we're done. I'm way over. So next week, if all goes well, we'll have Alejandra here. That'll be nice. It'll be cool. You can look at her new hair color and her new haircut in person, as much as this is in person. And look for those videos. They'll be coming out soon. And I will see you. Ciao.
Wow.